Olá, arrancamos para mais uma edição do programa Isto Não É Assim Tão Simples, da Fundação Francisco Manuel dos Santos. Hoje vamos explorar o espaço e tentar explicar por que razão o cosmos não é assim tão simples. Se costuma seguir os nossos episódios, sabe que as nossas entrevistas com os grandes craques internacionais ligados à política, economia e sociedade normalmente são conduzidas remotamente, virtualmente. Hoje é um momento histórico, porque temos o prazer de receber presencialmente, fisicamente, o nosso convidado de hoje, que é o Vítor Cardoso. Vítor, bem-vindo. Um dos maiores especialistas do mundo no que diz respeito à astrofísica, buracos negros, ondas gravitacionais, é investigador, cientista. É um grande prazer ter-te aqui connosco. Sei que colaboraste também com a Agência Europeia Espacial, a NASA também. Podíamos fazer esta entrevista em português, mas como é uma série internacional, vamos fazê-la em inglês. Tudo bem contigo?
Of course, let's do that. Yeah.
Let's do it indeed. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today, and this is such a interesting topic. As always, we're going to try to break it down in the beginning and make a simple commentary on your opinion of why the cosmos is not that simple.
Well, the cosmos is everything. We have a really hard time seeing through all of the dust that there is. We have a really hard time understanding when the universe was born. And we have trillions of stars, trillions of planets. So, I could say that the cosmos is the toughest topic of all of them that you can think of. So it's a really challenging issue that deals with the fundamentals. Why are we here? How was the universe born? Where is all of this going? So, it's really an exciting topic to talk about.
Now you've been looking at the stars pretty much your whole life, I would imagine. Tell us what astrophysics is exactly and what your job comprises of on a week-to-week basis or day-to-day basis.
Right. So astrophysics is the understanding of astronomical objects like the sun, the stars, planets like the Earth. So of course it involves also chemistry, and it involves a lot of science. So what we need to understand is, how do stars work? What type of fuel is the sun feeding on? How are stars born? How are neutron stars born? What are neutron stars? What happens to stars once they run out of fuel? What's a black hole? How many black holes do we have?
That's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions. Yeah. And so my day-to-day life is spent thinking about these issues. This means that I meet my team. It's a team of researchers, PhD students. So we go to my office. We talk about the open problems. We discuss what has been done over the years to understand, let's say, black holes. That's my topic of choice, right? And we think about the open issues. You see, the toughest part, as in everything in life, is really coming up with the question, with the interesting question, to find the answer to. And of course, there's a lot of mathematics behind this. We need to do calculations, but that's really just a nuisance. The interesting thing is, what question are we after? Let me give you an example. I'm trying to understand how loud are black holes when they are feeding. This has a technical name. Black holes are surrounded by matter. They eat stuff. And what I'm trying to understand is, do they make noise when they eat stuff, when they eat stars? What type of noise? And to understand this, you have to do a lot of mathematical calculations. And you need to struggle with your own limitations as a scientist. I don't understand this part of physics. I don't know if this problem is relevant. So every day I go to bed thinking about the issue. I think I have a solution. I wake up realizing there's a loophole in my argument. So I meet my team the day after. We come up with new calculations to do. And this is how days and weeks go by.
It's interesting, because I know we're pretty much the same age, and we grew up in an age where what we knew about space and the universe was so different to what we know now, even when it comes to popular culture, whether that's Star Trek, whether that's Star Wars, whether that's Buck Rogers, whether that's
right.
Whatever was portrayed on TV when we were growing up, is so different to what this current young generation watches and consumes. So how much have we learned from the universe in our lifetime, and how much are we dependent on technology to do that? Because if we look at the recent images that we saw from the James Webb telescope, they were so much better than the Hubble, that were so much better than the previous telescope.
That's right.
So how much have we learned and how fast are we learning?
That's right. I like the Buck Rogers analogy, right? So I think most of the things that were science fiction to us now are science, robust, solid science. Over the last 3 decades, we learned that the universe is expanding at an ever faster rate. So it's, expanding faster and faster. We know now at which rhythm it's expanding. We didn't know this when we were growing up. We barely knew that the expansion was accelerated. We've seen black holes. We've seen gravitational waves out there in the universe, traveling through the universe. We've seen signs of planets that look like the Earth. And this is only, a decade or 2 old, right? So we've learned a lot of things. We now know that space travel may be possible for mankind decades to come, but we are starting to understand what type of technology we need to do that, right? So all of the things that used to be science fiction now are science. So we've seen now with the James Webb Space Telescope, we've seen galaxies that are there since the beginnings of time, when the universe was only a few hundreds of millions of years. These are extremely ancient galaxies. We had no idea that galaxies and stars could form so early on the stage in the universe, right?
Talking about age, what's the latest estimate for how old the universe is right now?
Roughly 13.6 thousand million years. So 13.6 billion years for the universe. Yeah.
So looking at some of these images, and you mentioned black holes as well, and I remember the excitement when we had the images from the James Webb telescope, and they were beautiful to look at, but that's for someone like me who knows not that much about space and not that much about black holes. What did they mean to you?
Well, they meant that we're mapping the entire visible universe. Mankind, as we speak, is mapping the entire content in stars, of course, of the entire visible universe. It's not easy. I mean, this looks like it's really just an image, but you can think about all of the technological and scientific progress that's required to do this. We need to see stars behind a huge background of dust. There's trillions of stars, billions of stars in our galaxy. And we're now, as a civilization, as a society, we're able to study all of them, right? We're able to infer the presence of dark objects, black holes. We're able to infer the presence of a certain type of matter that we don't even know what it is. We call it dark matter just because we don't see it. But can you imagine how much progress, how much power, technological power we need to have to do this? We're looking at galaxies that were born, a few 100 million years after the universe was born. We're seeing the entire history of our universe. It's amazing. It's really amazing.
You mentioned space travel, and I don't want to get into too much of the technicalities around that, but at a time where we also constantly hear speculation or see speculation about human beings wanting or having, because of the climate emergency on our planet one day, to live on another planet, to look at other planets where it's possible to have human life. Is that something that could happen in our lifetime, you think?
I don't think so.
Okay.
There's a lot of technology that's required to study planets that may harbor life, and there's a huge leap in technology that's required for mankind to actually travel to other planets that may be habitable. But you see, we started a few decades ago. This is not that long, right, ago. We started to understand how to search for planets that may be similar enough to the Earth. And let me give you an example. The James Webb Space Telescope saw a planet 1,000 light years away. So this means it takes 1,000 years for light to travel from that planet to us, to the Earth. but it saw a planet that has water. This is one of the amazing things about the James Webb. It doesn't mean that this planet can host life, but it's a start. It's a start, it's a place to search for planets that may have life forms that are sufficiently close to ours. Right now, this is really just because we are thirsty for knowledge. But we know that the sun is going to die. We know that the sun eventually, in 5 billion years, is going to swallow the Earth. So as a civilization, we're doomed. So I think it doesn't hurt to start thinking about other possible places to live in the far future. On the other hand, let me say also that we have more pressing issues to deal with, right? Climate change, all of the energy greedy machines that we have on Earth. So there's other problems, but it doesn't hurt to know the universe we live in, to know where we should look for if we're looking for a new house.
It's interesting because in a way you've started to answer the next question I had for you, which is why is all of this relevant, right? Because a lot of the skeptics can say there's so many billions of euros that are spent on space exploration every year. Why can we not use that money on Earth for other projects to make our life better on a day-to-day basis? So is this one of the arguments that you use?
Yeah, that's a very interesting and challenging question. Of course, if you look at the societal problems, there's a lot of more pressing issues like poverty and hunger. But if you start thinking about it, science has allowed us to make huge progress on that front. We live longer, we live happier lives, and all of this because of the scientific breakthrough. So is it a lot of money to take 2 billion euros to fund a telescope that's going to teach us how the universe looks like? Maybe. It certainly looks like a lot of money. But if you look at the budget for defense across Europe or across America, this is just a fraction. What do we gain from spending a few billion euros in science and not investing on food or taking care of poverty? What do we? Well, first of all, we understand things. We understand the place we're in. We're understanding where we're going and where we came from. And in the process, this is something we've learned over the last centuries. While we're satisfying our curiosity, we're also learning how to build technology. All of the technology we know of, this microphone that's capturing my voice, all of this is the product of very simple questions, really just curiosity driven. And all of the technology that we have to extend life, our life, they were born from very simple questions. So my answer is yes, we should deal with poverty, we should deal with diseases, we should deal with hunger, but it's not by taking a small fraction of the available budget for science that we're going to do that. On the contrary, just make the society thirsty for knowledge, and we will deal with those problems simultaneously.
Well, while you were talking, there were actually so many questions that were popping into my head, besides the ones that I had planned. But when it comes to space exploration, something I don't understand is, for example, why there was this craze for the hunt to go to the moon, and then someone gets there and it's over and we do nothing with it. I know we're exploring multiple galaxies. I know we're looking for the far beyond, but what about our solar system? What about what's near us? What can we get from there? And why have we never gone back to the moon, really?
That's a very interesting question. I think, no, it's not suspicious. I think the answer is we've been there, we've done that, we bought the t-shirt.
Okay.
And we ate the burger. So we've been to the moon. There was a context. The context was, of course,
Political.
There was a Cold War going on. There was competition. But it's important to remind ourselves that, first of all, we spent hundreds of billions of dollars or euros, if you wish, going to the moon. Okay, that's orders of magnitude more money than we need to build a powerful instrument like the James Webb. Okay, so going to the moon is extremely expensive. So why should we go there again? Is there a reason? Is there a strong reason? Now, when we went there the first time, there was the political reason, there was a scientific reason. We wanted to understand the composition of the moon.
Right.
We know the composition of the moon. And we wanted to leave stuff there to learn new things. So when the men first went to the moon, they left a series of mirrors there that we still use nowadays to reflect laser beams off of Earth. So this means that there's a laser beam on Earth in the US reflecting off these mirrors that we left on the moon. And it taught us a great deal. It taught us how gravity behaves. It told us that the moon is getting farther away from the Earth. So the moon, by the way, is getting farther away from the Earth at a rate of roughly 3 centimeters a year.
Okay.
So it tells us that it's driven by tides. We understand this. We don't have a strong reason to go to the moon again. It's a lot of money, and there's no science case, there's no political case. But it's not true that we're not interested in the solar system, right?
Okay.
There's missions going to Mars.
Yes.
And we want to understand Venus, we want to understand Jupiter. There's missions specifically built to understand our sun, how it shines, what are these large-scale fluctuations in the magnetic field of the sun that sometimes interfere with technology on Earth. So we want to understand that. We're going to understand that. We're just not thinking about the moon anymore. It's not interesting anymore.
The moon is so close, and that is, I think, a reason why I think, or many people have speculated about the reason why we just can't go back to see if there's anything more to learn. But when you look at the solar system and beyond, and you've mentioned that there is a constant search for conditions on planets where there could be life, and I have to ask you, have you never seen anything in your research that has led you to believe that in fact there is life out there in a form?
Not in my research, but if you
Or have you been sworn to secrecy?
I am an alien. So I think it's kind of a simple, for anyone who's mathematically minded, it's a simple calculation that you can do, a simple estimate. There's trillions of planets out there in the universe, okay? And we know already hundreds of them that are similar enough to the Earth. So it's a question of probability. In one of them, there have to be conditions for life as we know it to develop. So I think it's highly likely that there's other places in the universe with life, carbon-based life as we know it, okay? So I am sure that eventually in a decade, in 2 decades, 100 years from now, we're going to see life as we know it. It doesn't mean...
But would the scientists be allowed to communicate that to the general public?
So that's the catch. So first of all, I think most of us, when we hear about alien life, we have in mind these green fellows, 1 meter tall, green little guys. It doesn't need to be this way, right?
No, of course.
Life can just be
Right.
microbes, right? Microbial life. And that's probably the first sign of alien life that we're going to find. But it's also important to keep in mind that we tend to be very anthropocentric. And it may be the case that there's life, but that's really just so totally different from life on Earth. There might be other life forms that have no relation whatsoever
Exactly.
to the life forms we see on Earth. Okay.
Exactly.
So I think it's important to keep an open mind about this issue.
As you look into the near future and in our lifetimes, what are some discoveries or a landmark moments that you still expect to see? What can we learn in the next 20, 30, 40 years? I'm not saying we're going to live that long.
There's so much that we need to know, so much. So if you think about where you are, how we're built with matter. Okay, electrons, protons,
Right.
technical stuff.
Right.
We know how these guys work.
Okay.
Where did this come from? We're told, because it's in our equations, that the universe was born out of a Big Bang. But how did this happen? Why was the Big Bang triggered a few thousands of millions of years ago? Why then and not some other time? Why do we only see matter and not antimatter? What is this business with dark matter? We know it's there because we feel its gravity. We've seen the gravitational pull of dark matter, but we have no idea what it is. And where is the universe going? We know roughly where we started. How is this going to end? Are we doomed? Are all the life forms doomed to be destroyed at some point in the future? We don't know this. So there's so much we need to understand. I told you we've seen the universe expanding, but there's a tension. Even in that aspect, we don't know the precise details. We don't know how fast it's expanding. There's tension in different measurements. We need to understand this. And it all relates to, if you wish, philosophical questions. Why are we here? Is there a purpose to life? Are we meant to understand all of the mechanisms of this wonderful machine that's the universe, all of these basic physical laws? We need to understand this. We're going to understand this if we're sufficiently ambitious as a civilization.
And the chances of this happening or not, how much of that has to do with technology and with science and being able to continue to improve the equipment that you have?
Everything. It's all about science and all about technology, and it's all about our will as a life form, as a civilization, to say, I want to know. Because you see, it's always in our power to say, I don't want to spend money on science. I don't want to develop further technology. I'm happy the way I am. Let's live a merry and happy life, and let's not explore any of this, because, there's dangers associated with this. We saw the nuclear bomb, all of, mankind seems to be destroying itself. Let's not do that anymore. If we do that, if we go that way, I am sure advances in science will stop. But we have the power as a civilization to say, no, I want to know more. I want to go further in extending the lifetime of a human being. I want to go further in understanding where in space I'm allowed to go. I want to go and do space travel. I want to go to regions close to black holes. I want to see if wormholes exist. We have this power, and in the last few thousands of years, mankind said, yes, let's do that. Let's know more. Let's embark in this journey, in this exciting journey of understanding our universe. And I think that's the way to go.
I know you collaborate with the European Space Agency, with NASA as well, on projects that are linked to black holes and gravitational pull. How much collaboration is there between space agencies and governments and scientists from different countries? And here I'll mention as well the political tensions that there can be or not, right? So, I mean, something that in the old days Soviet Union or now Russia finds out, or they share it, the Chinese, the Americans. I mean, who are the big superpowers in space exploration now, and how much do they share information?
That's a fascinating question. So I think it's important to say also that we started these very big collaborations because science now is a large-scale thing. Science, physics is always data-driven. We need to have observations, right? But we're so developed, we know so much, that to have new observations that are relevant, that actually say something new, we need to have a lot of technology involved. Yeah. We need to have large-scale budgets, and we have to have a large community involved. So that's the first thing. And the other thing is, to build this technology, we don't do it in a lifetime now. It takes 1, 2, 3 generations of more. So some of the instruments that we started to build now in 2020 are only going to be operated in 2050, not by me, by my student or by my student's student. So you see, we're linking different generations together via science. And I think it's a noble thing to do. It's not because of me. I'm not going to profit from that. My student or my son or my daughter is going to profit from that. So I think it's a noble aspect. The other thing is, despite all of the political frictions, tensions, the scientific community is very close-knit. Even when there's tensions between China, Russia, the US, and Europe, there's a fabric of scientists in all of these countries that work together. Of course, also science is a reflection of economic power. Right now, and probably as you might expect, the US, China, and Europe are leading the way. These are the regions with the most economic power. And there are joint projects. For example, NASA, the US, and Europe are collaborating in building a very large, the largest space telescope. It's called LISA. And it's going to fly in 2034. These are 3 satellites separated by roughly a couple of million kilometers, and they are trailing the Earth. And the purpose is to observe gravitational waves, ripple in space-times, traveling gravitational waves, if you wish, that are going to see across the entire universe black holes, gravitational waves, ripples from the Big Bang. But you see, this is an effort, a joint effort that started more than 20 years ago, and it's only going to end when we have the telescope built and data coming on. So I mean, if you think about it, it's a noble enterprise. It's an investment of billions of euros, but it's certainly going to pay off. The science case for this is amazing.
Yeah, Vítor, because I think the worst thing that could happen could be one government or one entity holding and withholding information from other experts who could interpret it in different ways, right?
That could be, but fortunately, I think the scientific community found ways around that. So, for example, NASA and the European Space Agency now are strongly stimulating the community. In some cases, they're forcing the community to release the observational data 1 year after it was collected.
Right.
It has to be shared across the entire globe with all the scientific community. So that avoids totalitarian government, kind of actions and withholding information.
All right. Well, that's good to know. We're going to finish this interview as we do with all our guests with a series of quick-fire questions. So in one sentence, more or less, if you could try to answer these that we have for you. So firstly, and this is all obviously bringing your experience and your insight into these questions. So what is one trait that a good leader could really benefit from having, and why?
I think kindness. He should be kind, meaning he should know who is leading and the problems they are facing.
Okay. What is the biggest challenge humanity faces in the next decade, from your perspective?
In the next decade, I think the biggest challenge is humanity itself. We're just too many, and we're just too energy greedy. So on these timescales, the next 2, 3, 4 decades, we need to find ways to control our growth and our energy dependence. Yeah.
That leads us into the next question, which is, if you could change one thing in the world by magic, what would that be?
I would make cars disappear.
Really?
Yes. I would plant a tree in every parking spot, for sure.
But that's not realistic.
I know.
Well,
it's magic.
Okay.
You asked me about magic.
Okay. And what is the most important learning from your life and career so far?
By far, making mistakes is acceptable. It's acceptable to have mistakes, just work to correct them. That's it.
Okay, interesting. We hadn't heard that one before. Vítor Cardoso, astrophysicist, such a pleasure to have you on this show, helping us explain why the cosmos is not that simple. Obrigado,
Thank you, Pedro.
Vítor. Foi prazer ter mais craque de uma matéria, tema tão importante para percebermos por que razão, neste episódio, o cosmos não é assim tão simples. Até breve.